is it preferred that a person should be more comfortable and positive about Yiddishkeit, the way he would be involved in a Chabad house, where there's no judgment and to a great extent people don't push you, or should you move to a community where everyone keeps Torah? The two sides of this coin is that you go to a community where everybody is religious, you may feel a lot of negative judgment towards you. But on the other hand, there's a lot of motivation for growth. And in the Chabad house, perhaps you feel like you're not sufficiently pushed. Well, I think the answer to that question is quite subjective. In other words, I think it's very individual. It depends on the person's level. I want to say something which I know is controversial, but I'm going to say it based on my experience. It's anecdotal experience. It's not a scientific study, but it's anecdotal experience not from one or two people, but from many people. When a person becomes religious, the people involved directly make them religious almost like their parents, literally. The involvement, the care, the concern is very deep. The person becomes frum or frummer in a Chabad house. The bond that they have with the shluchim is so deep and so special, it's almost like parents. If they move, and they're moving for good reasons, either they're moving because they want to grow themselves in Yiddishkeit, or as often is the case, they move because they want better chinuch for their children, the cost is often very, very high. I know people who never left their Chabad houses, and they didn't become as religious perhaps as they would have become had they lived in a community. But all in all, when you look at their children and how their children grew up and what their children became, it was a win-win. My guts tell me that there's very good reason for a person who comes from a certain community, if they could, they should stay in that community. If staying in that community is going to drag them down, but if they, even though it'll be more challenging for them to continue growing, and it'll certainly be more challenging for the education of their children, in the end, I believe they'll see that it's advantageous that to move to a big city and a big community where there are nobodies. Nobody knows them, and they don't get the kind of attention and care and counsel that they would need. And even if they have a better school and a better community, they often end up feeling ignored. They almost feel like their step up is anticlimactic. It works against them. So my inclination is that a person should stay where they became from to the extent possible. However, there is truth to this statement that when you're around people who are very accepting, in quotations, and there's nobody pushing you, that you stop growing at a certain point. And clearly, there are people who should move to a different community where they'll get stronger support. On the other hand, you can stay where you are and get the shliach or motivate yourself to continue growing in a better direction. The important thing is that a decision like this cannot be made with one dimension. You can't make the decision based only on, I want to become more religious. You have to consider your spouse, you have to consider your children, you have to consider your job. And you have to consider that when you move from a community where you're very important to a community where you're another number, it doesn't always work out as easy as you think.